Morning, everybody. Welcome again. Looking forward to actually seeing all you in person someday again soon. It might be next year. Appreciate the continued support and if you've got some interest in topics, by all means, or a person that you think would be good for speaking, by all means, send them my way. Rick's awesome. We've known him for a lot of years. He's a friend of the family, friend of Amaxra. Went through the Microsoft black hole, I think is what they call it, or spent a lot of years doing that, and he's done some training sessions in our office that were just highly useful. So with that getting started, our guest speaker today is going to address how COVID-19 has changed the mechanics of selling. Gotten a lot of questions on, okay, what do I do with my sales team? And a lot of sales guys saying, okay, now what do I do? I can't shake hands. And that's what most of us do for a living. So, the mechanics of selling has changed with the COVID-19, but what you sell has not. So Rick Wong of the 5 Abilities, and it's a great book, I've read it myself, will take us through a discussion on how customers look for 5 things from the people they do business with: visibility, credibility, viability, capability, and reliability. Let's explore how the right sales strategy will keep you in the right path despite the times of COVID. Please welcome Rick Wong. Rick, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, always got to make sure I share with you guys the right one. Okay.
Yep.
So thanks. Yeah, cool. So everybody can see that. Thank you for having me. It's JP is right. I've done quite a bit of work with Mike and Roz, both pre-Mic or during Microsoft and post Microsoft. So it is kind of like being part of the family. So I'm very happy to be here. So JP already announced who I am. I'm going to jump right into what the 5 abilities are, because what I want is for this to be an interactive discussion, and so I don't want to use up a lot of time in presentation. Maybe a little bit of background. I did sales and marketing in the tech industry for about 29 years, and then was in the music industry before that, which is all about sales and marketing, even if you are a performer. My last job at Microsoft, I ran Asia for the OEM division of Microsoft. So I've had a lot of experience. I haven't gone through a COVID, but I'm finding that, like what JP said, the ways we sell have to change necessarily, but it's a good reminder, I found, for my clients to let them to make sure everybody remembers what we sell is the same thing. So that's what I'm going to go through today. So number 1, visibility. We want to be seen in the right way at the right time by the right people. That is the same whether we're in COVID land or we're in a regular business environment. The only thing here is you still want to be seen in the right way, and we'll talk about how you do that. You want to be seen by the right people. You know who they are. What I found mostly in this era of COVID is for a lot of companies, not all, but for a lot of companies, it's not the right time to buy. And so if you're calling up a customer or a client trying to close a piece of business or whatever you're trying to do to get money from them, it may not be the right time because their revenue has been interrupted. And we'll talk about that. Credibility. It's your opportunity still to show superior expertise and experience. You are the subject matter expert in whatever you're selling. And just because the client's business is slowed down, it doesn't mean they don't still need your expertise. You may be delivering that expertise maybe without getting paid for it at all, or maybe getting paid a reduced amount because of the COVID situation. But you want to still be delivering that credibility ongoing, so that when we get out the back end of this, hopefully soon, that you are top of mind for your clients or your potential clients. Viability, solutions that fit the needs and readiness of both buyers and sellers. This is about qualification. The only thing worse than not getting a piece of business is getting the wrong piece of business. Everybody in business knows that. And so this is a time, and I know you can't shake hands, but we have all these great technologies like Teams and others like it. Certainly the phone, believe it or not, I still do phone calls, where we can talk to clients and learn what their needs are and how their needs are changing as we move through this COVID environment. And I have one client right now who works, who's opening a healthcare vertical. And boy, I'll tell you, talk about changes in the way you do business in the healthcare industry. And they're learning that right now. They're not collecting the revenue, but they're going to be even more of a subject matter expert when they get the other side. Capability, deliver on the personal reasons people make business decisions. You can't really make a sale that's going to last, a relationship that's going to last, until you understand the personal reasons people make business decisions. Companies don't make buying decisions, people do. And here's a great opportunity, because even though people are busy, they're busy on different things, and you can still take the time to learn what's most important to them. Reliability is something we deliver from day one, not just after we get the sale. We have to be accountable and responsive to customer needs or client needs from day one, and we do that from the first time we meet people. So these are the 5 abilities. And like JP said, I have a book on it called Winning Lifelong Customers with the 5 Abilities. And I'd be happy if you read it. So we'll go next. Oops. Sorry. I should have been doing this all along. Okay, so this is going to be really quick, but it's very important, especially given the COVID situation. In any sales cycle, being visible and being credible these days is really only about 20% of what you have to do to win a piece of business. That has changed over time. When I first got into sales many years ago, the ways clients and customers got information was from us, the salespeople. These days, by the time you show up at their doorstep, they research you on the internet and through other means, and they probably know more about you than you know about yourself. So visibility, credibility doesn't account for as much of what the salesperson does anymore. It's really more of a marketing function. Where the salesperson really earns their money is on viability, which is qualifying the deal, and then capability, reliability, which is the relationship part of selling. And the reason I put this up here is because visibility, credibility, you're already doing it if you have a website, if you have social media, whatever. Viability, capability, reliability, developing the relationship with your client is something that you do ongoing, whether you are able to close a piece of business or not. And now is the time to show that you want a relationship, that you're reliable, that you're capable of understanding their personal needs, so that again, when we get on the other side of COVID, you are top of mind for your clients. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's a quick introduction of the 5 abilities, and I thought I'd just open it up to questions.
Thank you, sir. Anybody got any questions at all?
Quiet from the gallery. So
Well, I didn't want to dominate, but Rick, I had a couple of thoughts about it. So you mentioned that during the COVID, that the principles remain the same, but to me, some of the devil's in the details. And for instance, like you said, we can't actually physically shake hands with people. We can't, go see them. What are your thoughts about the
Unknown
concept,
participant is now joining.
the concept of video Teams meetings, for want of a better word, or Zoom meetings, whatever, so that at least you get to see the person on the other side? That's my first question. And then my second question, given that you've had a lot of time with working around the world in many places, I heard yesterday from somebody that if you're doing a video conference with Asia, you're expected to be wearing a suit and tie. This was from a guy who is actually a Finnish guy. He comes from Finland and is working in America. But it was just interesting that he talked about that you are expected to be of a certain dress standard, which was the first time I heard about it. When you're dealing with people in different cultures. So if you don't mind taking on those 2 questions, that would
Sure.
be much appreciated.
Sure. So first on the Teams meeting, or and Teams is great, but I know there's a lot of other tools out there that people use.
I mean video conferencing in general.
Yeah, video conferencing. It's the only way we can have that face to face these days. And so the more I can get people on video conferencing, the better. It's pretty hard, and this has been forever. It's pretty hard to develop that personal bond on a phone call. And so, and with everybody doing video conferencing, I think it's great. The other thing, I'm gonna step out of your question a little bit. You guys, all of you who run a company yourself or a company, have information that can be valuable to your clients. Part of it is anticipating need, like anticipating the changes in their business as a result of COVID, anticipating what they might need. I work with a data analytics firm, and they developed a whole modeling around making sure the right PPE is in the right place, and they're making that available to their medical center clients free of charge, just as a means to stay top of mind as we're going through the whole COVID thing. So all of you, I'm sure, as I say that, can think of things that you can offer up. For me, when COVID first happened and nobody knew what was going to happen tomorrow, a lot of my client work got cut off because there was so much uncertainty. But I just kept going with consulting. I just kept up the video conferences. They appreciated it. A month and a half, couple months went by, and they hired me back. And we're seeing more and more of that as people learn how to deal with COVID. So it isn't just the video conferences, but when you find an article that is specifically important to your client, or if you have content that is good for your client, send it out. Keep the information flowing from you personally to further that relationship. On videos in other parts of the world, look, they are the customer or client, you are the seller. And so you do have to adapt to them versus them having to adapt to you. And they are more formal in other parts of the world, not just Asia, but UK has gotten pretty informal, but they're still a little bit more informal than us. So it's kind of the anchorman thing or anchor person thing. Basically you have to look good from basically mid torso up. And yeah, so you hear all kinds of stories of anchor people, wearing shorts or sweatpants or whatever on set, because all you're going to see is from mid torso on up. And it is important, especially if you're talking to like executives in Asia in particular. It is important for you to look like them. So I do, out of camera shot here, I do have a sport coat that I can throw on if I need to. I've only had one case where I had to put on a tie, and when we got on, I was the only one with a tie, so I took it off. Does that answer the question, Mike?
Well, yeah, thank you. And the gentleman that I was talking about, as I said, he's from Finland, and he deals with suppliers, so he's negotiating significant amounts of hardware for a large company, not Microsoft, and so this is just an interesting observation that he mentioned yesterday when I was talking, and saying that he prefers to not do video because it forces him to have to provide a more professional projection than what he really wants to do in normal everyday meetings. But I started thinking about that and recalling my time in Asia as well, and you're right, England as well, but to a lesser degree, and I'm sure there are other places around the world, but it was just interesting because it was one of these things that I didn't think of till then.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, if you want to avoid a video conference with a potential client or existing client, that's the same thing as saying I don't want to meet with you.
Agreed.
So
yeah, it's very different meeting with a CEO in New York than it is in Southern California or Seattle, for that matter.
Yeah.
It's and I generally try to be, the better dressed of the bunch without being extreme about it, and just dress like you go to work, and then if you're talking to a customer, dress like they go to work.
Yeah. And you know what, you bring up a good point, JB. It's always our responsibility to be overdressed.
Right.
Being overdressed is always acceptable. Being underdressed is not. So.
Right.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I was thinking about it that that it actually, in the 5 abilities, the visibility is something that I think is alive and well within the modern COVID world. And I think that visibility leads towards credibility. I don't know if it goes any further along than that, but certainly, the saying you only get one chance to make a first impression, and all these other kind of sayings like that. I think that's probably as real today as it ever was. I've been talking with some of our customers, and I've seen everything from a guy who wears funny ski hats. It's the funniest thing. So he wears the most ridiculous ski hats, different ones each call, and
that's funny.
Yeah, and you get other people who sort of put backgrounds that they want to be in, like palm trees and a beach or something.
Mhm.
But I was thinking about it, in the focus of this discussion, and I was thinking, it is a game changer to not be able to go and see people. They talk about how much percentage of impression is body language, and of course you don't have a lot of that, but you must get more with video, I'm sure, and with that, your credibility is going to either go up or down based on what you look like. At least that was what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Um, so I get the ski hat thing. I mean, there are people who think differently about that. You want to be memorable. Certainly, somebody with a purple ski hat on is probably going to be memorable. But
Yes.
you want to be memorable for the right reasons. So under visibility, being seen in the right way at the right time by the right people. Probably I wouldn't wear a purple ski hat if I was talking to a CEO in Japan, for instance. You bring up the visibility standpoint, unless somebody else has a question. I did want to bring this up. And this goes across the entire sales process or the sales pipeline with all the abilities. I find a lot of companies, mainly, not just small companies, but even big companies like Microsoft, where people go in and they want to focus on the type of buyer that is most like them. So in Microsoft, we find ourselves focusing most on the technical buyer. But there are multiple buyer types, and in relational selling, in enterprise selling, you have to sell to all of them. So there's, and this is very important, and it relates to what we were just talking about, because you want to be seen differently by each type. There is the decision maker, and that is the person who can say yes and make it stick. So if they say yes, everybody else has to follow. They're typically the person with the money. They set the budgets and so forth. So that's the ultimate person who you want to say yes. You also have the finance people who have to tell the decision maker, yes, this is a good move. This is something that's going to make us money. This is something that's going to save us money, whatever. But you have to sell to those people too. Also, the people have to make it work. So in the technology world, those are the technologists. You have to sell to them, and at least in my experience, the technical community can sometimes be less formal than the business community. So if I knew I was going to be on the phone with a bunch of technical buyers, in fact, I've been told this by technical buyers, if we see you with a suit and tie, you lose credibility. So you have to make sure you look right for the right audience. And then there's the user community, who you have to have relationships with to make sure that whatever you're selling is something the users will give good feedback on to the decision maker. Then there are other key influencers, things like board members, advisors, other clients of theirs, who will influence the decision makers' process of deciding whether to do business with you or somebody else. So the things we present and the ways we look sometimes, the vehicles we use to present are different for each of those communities. And it really is up to the personality of the company. Like one of the clients I have, the board president was an original founder of the company. He's a pretty laid back guy, and it turns out we have a whole community of common friends. So, like, I do a lot of calls with him in my car because we're pretty informal. I wouldn't do that for a board chairman who I didn't know as well. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions, comments? So I'm gonna go to another thing that maybe will be helpful. People ask me, how do you know if you have enough visibility, if you have reached the right amount of credibility, and so on? So on visibility, you got to ask yourself the question, are decision makers and influencers starting to ask to meet with you versus you having to chase them? If they're starting to ask to meet with you, then you've reached that right kind of visibility. It means they're now demanding your time versus you going out and trying to hunt them down. On credibility, if they're starting to ask you for advice beyond what your products and services deliver, that tells you, number one, you have the right amount of credibility because they're treating you as a business advisor rather than just somebody who sells them a piece of software or whatever it is that you sell. So you got to look for that sign that says, yes, I've reached credibility. Viability, if it's a qualified customer, if they're the right customer or client and they're the right fit for you, you're the right fit for them, they will move away from primarily discussing costs and they'll move to discussing results. Because if they trust you, results are all that matter. The cost really isn't the important thing. You know, unless you're way out of the cost model that they can afford. But primarily, if you're working with the right customer, they're more interested in results than costs. And then on capability, you have to be clear on the buying motivations of the decision makers and influencers. And when I say that, I've gone through this with the Amaxa folks, but there are 5 general buying types. There are people that are looking for safety. These are people who are risk averse. Maybe their company is going through some hard times. We're finding there are people in this COVID environment who are looking for safety, meaning like as simple as I want to keep my job. I want to keep the jobs of all the people that work for me and so forth. So they're going to make decisions with that as a priority. There are people looking for simplicity, meaning COVID in some cases has created so much work for some companies because their staffs are down or it's hard to do their work only online. So they're looking for simpler ways to do things with fewer people. I have one client where in their last poll, I think they only had 30% of their employees who are willing to come into the office, which might be okay because it's a tech company, but they have to figure out how to get things done in the office in a more efficient way. There are decision makers and buyers who are looking for rewards. They're looking for the next promotion. They're looking for the next bonus. And if you sell them the right thing, you can help them get that for them. Okay, and that's really what they're looking for from you. There are buyers that are looking for recognition. People who look for recognition typically are the ones who are the helpers in the office. They're the ones who people go to for advice, for subject matter expertise, and so forth. And you, with your consulting, can help them do that. On reliability, You want to get to the point where the decision makers and influencers are no longer asking, well, what if this happens? And the reason they stopped asking, what if this happens, it's because they completely trust you. Okay. So in your sales activities, you are looking for the client to get to these stages. They're not asking you what if. They know that you know what their win is. They're more interested in results than costs. They are asking you for advice beyond just what it is that you sell, and they are kind of starving to meet with you. You're no longer having to chase them. So that's kind of just a quick rundown on how you tell where you are in the sales process. So any questions there?
I would say this, JP, I would say you hit on a lot of the day-to-day calls I get from business owners. I was just on with one yesterday who's got, people all over the country, and his sales manager sits in Wyoming. And he asked me the simple question. I had him on, he called me at my cell, and then I jumped onto a Teams call with him just so that I could show him real quick what it does. Very familiar with Teams, but hadn't had the phone hooked up. And he asked me, and he asked me, so why can't I make a call? And I go, well, you need the license. But what it came down to is my sales manager is in Wyoming and I'm in Texas. Do you feel like it's a good exchange? Because I've got an employee that's concerned about COVID and coming into the office here. So, his ultimate question was, can I be partially on a phone system and partially off, on the Teams phone system? But what it came around that you just touched on was, does it work for employee meetings? And do you have the same effect? And so it was pretty interesting to me. I went through just the Amaxtra story that Mike went through with you earlier before the call of how we've moved to, we started in October and just tried it. And so before COVID ever hit, and it's really been helpful to us and to me just to go, well, personally, here was my experience, because I'm a sales guy. I shake hands and make friends for a living, and it is different, but it's still better than, like you said, just the call or just the email or anything else. So It was interesting. A lot of business owners are really going, okay, how do I keep my team cohesive, productive? How do I tell if they're actually working or not? It's a tough thing.
Yeah. It obviously part of it is trust, but when you hop on a call like this and you go to what I call the Brady Bunch view, where you have all the I'm probably the only one old enough to remember the Brady Bunch, but where you have all the pictures where you have the pictures of everybody on the screen. Uh-huh. It's not like being in the same room with people, but it is better than just being on the phone. I mean, people can't be sitting there when you're in the Brady Bunch view going like this, Yeah. So
I love that that commercial, and I think it's a Geico commercial or one of them where Flo, the lady in white, they're all on a conference call and talking, and one of them's got their cell phone down and they're clicking on it. Yeah. At first they start with the cell phone in front of them and clicking on it, and they go, we see you. And she's like, hey, I'm sorry, and lowers the phone and continues doing what she's doing, not paying any attention at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So any other questions?
I think we've got a quiet audience today.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to this slide, see if this spawns anything. So this slide came about because, everybody's heard of the sales process versus just a pipeline and so forth. And so I put this together to help some new people in the organization understand how the 5 abilities marries with a traditional sales process. So you may have different terms for it if you sold for a long time, but quickly, you know, there's the first approach, the first prospect response. You know, the first approach is typically a marketing demand gen type thing. First prospect response is when they call you back or they ask for a meeting. The needs assessment is where you start the qualification, which is the viability here. Typically, needs assessment leads to a first proposal. And the first proposal is typically to test understanding. You know that you probably aren't there yet. You want to handle objections and get to what I call same side of the table selling, which means you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with your customer or client, solving the problems together versus just pitching things at them. You tune the proposal, you give them a final proposal, and then you deploy the solution or deploy your product, whatever it is. And then something that I think people don't focus on enough sometimes is the resell. As you're deploying your solution, whether it be a technical solution or something else, there will always be people who get buyer's remorse. And so just because you've closed the deal doesn't mean you stop selling. You have to continue reminding the customer the value that is coming when you finish deployment. And that's for almost just about anything you sell, unless maybe it's a consumable. You know, that's probably the only thing you don't have to continue to resell, I hope. But the reason I put this slide up here is visibility and credibility. We talked happen in the front of the sales process, and in modern selling, this is largely done initially by the marketing organization. They're the ones that make your company visible. They start, you know, you've put demos online now and everything. So the things that I used to do, carrying around demos and so forth, really aren't done so much by salespeople anymore because they're typically on websites and so forth. Viability, that's just qualification, and it's still done by the salesperson. The salesperson is the primary qualifier to determine whether or not this is the right customer at the right time and that you are the right supplier at the right time. But the main thing I wanted to point out is capability, which is understanding the personal needs of whoever it is that you're selling to, goes across the entire sales cycle. You don't just get to the end of viability and decide, oh, now I got to figure out what they need. Capability starts from the very first time you talk to a customer. And reliability starts from the very first time you reach out to them. And in the early days, it looks like responsiveness on the phone. You know, a callback within 2 to 3 hours, or an email back within 2 to 3 hours. If you say on a call that I'm going to give you a coffee cup, then make sure you get the coffee cup out in the time that you said you're going to get it out. All that plays into the customer or the client's perception of whether or not you're going to be a reliable partner for them. And again, it doesn't start when you get the yes and you're delivering product or services. It starts the very first time you engage with that client. And I always emphasize this to people because I see so many companies, big and small, who think reliability translates to customer service, and customer service isn't important until they're paying you. And it's just not true. When companies look at it that way, customer service tends to be pretty bad. Okay. Any questions there? Any comments? It's a quiet group.
Yes, it is.
Okay, anything like Mike, JP, anything else you guys want me to cover?
I think we're good.
Well, the points that you covered with me were the ones that I've kind of learned over the several months that I've been working remotely and isolated. So I was just surprised because I didn't really think about, you know, the cultural requirements of different places in it. That was something that, as I said, it was highlighted to me by you know, by somebody who was working in that role. I didn't even think that was an issue. But the other thing was just, you know, how can we, you know, maintain that touch when we don't touch? And and I think you answered both of those questions very, very nicely for me. I really don't have anything else. I think it is strange times. I think we've just got to do the best we can with the tools we've got. And overall, I think that it kind of counts even more than ever to be responsive. There's nothing worse than having people go dark on you and just become a black hole. So that's the only other observation there.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, and I said this a little bit earlier, but I really want to emphasize this. Your clients are dealing, just like you, your clients are dealing with something they've never dealt with before, for the most part. And unless they're 100 years old and they dealt with the last pandemic. And with new things come new problems. And so if you're dealing with certain problems like communication, outreach, whatever it might be, you can kind of safely assume that your customers and clients are facing those same problems. So they may not be ready to buy. I talked about, you know, the right time to buy may not be now for all your clients, but it's never the wrong time for them to receive new information for how other companies are dealing with things that they're also dealing with, how COVID is affecting the industry overall and how that might apply to them. So believe me, people, and I've seen this in the healthcare industry. I've seen this. I have one client who serves the healthcare industry, one client who is in the healthcare industry, and sometimes they don't even know the questions to ask. So I have one client who's in telehealth, and this telehealth, you'd think, should be a booming business for them because they do all their stuff online, really over FaceTime, with the exception of a small portion of their business, about 3 to 5% of their business. But for whatever reason, people weren't making appointments, and it was a simple thing where people thought that making an appointment with a doctor over a video conference was going to be expensive. And all it took was for the doctor to send out a note saying, no, I just want to keep up with you in this time. They happen to be a dermatology office. In this time, as the sun is coming out, and a lot of their clients work outdoors, I want to make sure I'm keeping up with you to make sure that you don't need my help and you don't let it get too far before I can't help you. And so their calls went through the roof. So I don't know what it is for you, but if you're having a problem, it's likely your client is. And so reach out, share with them. Send them emails, schedule short video conferences, I have one client who does 12-minute video conferences. You know, it works for them, so it works for me, and we get a lot done. And because they're only 12 minutes, we do them more often. So that can work as well.
Some of the major trends that I've noticed is people seem to go dark longer than usual, and then just pop up again. You know,
Yeah.
and say, hey, something I've noticed a lot, and I know Mike has too, is because we're doing, you know, a video conference with somebody, they realize that now they can chat with you. And so I get a lot of, just throughout the day, instead of them where they would be picking up the phone or sending me an email, just hitting me at chat and asking a quick question, and then you get back to them. So I think
Right.
with things being so different, everybody's trying to get used to it. You know, we're struggling through some of that too. It's just the patterns have changed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
our business has gone crazy. But you know, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, just figuring out the new normal. Even like these, you know, these things where we're getting together. I noticed, you know, the numbers for just about every event that I go to has gone down just because so many people are used to it. But you know, like this one, we posted on our website, and I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody come back and ask me a question after the fact. So, you know,
Sure.
obviously if I get those for you, you know, happy to forward them to you to get the questions answered.
Sure.
So yeah, that was all I had.
Okay, cool.
And unless anybody's got any other questions, I guess we can close this down a little early.
I just wanted to say thank you, Rick, for all your wisdom.
Yeah,
It's really, really good to gain your insights on these things.
No problem. And for all of you who aren't asking questions, by the way, this is something you deal with if you're in Asia. They don't ask questions. So they will send emails after the fact. I guess I should have put my information up here, but I am at rick.wong@the5abilities.com. So if you do have questions that you think may be unique to your industry, shoot me an email. You can also get all my information on LinkedIn and my website.
Yep. Tracy, if you would you pop his information into the chat bar there to the right too? Thanks. Okay, well, I totally appreciate it, Rick.
Yeah.
Yep. I think we'll let everybody go. If you have any questions, by all means, you can chat with me, and Rick will see it too on his chat, you know, in the chat window. And thank you again. Look forward to seeing you or talking to you next month. And reach out anytime. We're always here. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rick.